Miss
Chapter
Olga,
1.
who at that moment was
Ordinary
talking about
world.
ancient clothing,
Dennis
always felt the weight of
looking in surprise at
responsibility
what
on
was
his
happening.
shoulders, even though he was
Other
only
students
15.
began
to whisper, pointing
Not
at
because
Lucy
anyone
and the
asked
glowing
him to.
object. It just turned out that way.
The
light grew brighter,
Among
and
his
suddenly
group
the
of friends,
space around the
he had
friends
somehow
began to imperceptibly become the one who made
The walls
decisions,
of the museum rippled
resolved
as in a
minor
crooked
quarrels,
mirror,
and
sounds
figured out what
disappeared,
to do on
and
a
a
boring
strange
school
feeling
day.
of weightlessness enveloped
Sometimes
their
it
bodies.
annoyed him, especially
They were
when he
as if
wanted to
being
just
pulled
go
somewhere,
somewhere, flow,
into an
but deep
unknown
down,
abyss.
Dennis
Beyond
was
the
proud of his
boundaries of the
ability to be
familiar
a leader.
world.
The last thing Dennis
trained his
managed to see was
strategic thinking,
Lucy's frightened
mentally
gaze,
breaking down
Artem's
any
surprised
situation
face,
into
and a
components,
strange,
looking for the
almost
most
fatalistic
advantageous
calm in
options.
Yaroslav's eyes. This habit
Then
often
a
helped him in
blinding blue
school
wave
chess
engulfed them
tournaments,
all,
but
and
sometimes
they
hindered
vanished
his
from the local
communication
history
with peers
museum
who
hall,
valued
leaving
spontaneity
behind
and
only
carefree
astonished
fun.
witnesses and a quiet
Lucy,
echo of
on
the
the other
strange
hand,
event.
seemed to live in a
They had
world
been
of her own
transported to where they had
fascinations.
only read in legends.
Her room
to the
resembled a
forgotten
miniature
city,
museum,
existing
shelves
outside of
lined with
time.
books on history, mythology, and archaeology, walls hung with reproductions of ancient maps and engravings. She could spend hours talking about vanished civilizations, the exploits of heroes from past eras, and the mysteries of ancient legends. Classmates considered her a bit strange, but Lucy didn't care much. She found much more interesting company in the ghosts of the past than in the present. Her curiosity was boundless, and her courage manifested not in physical strength but in her willingness to delve into the unknown, unravel complex riddles, and question generally accepted truths. Artem was the complete opposite of Lucy in his focus on the material world but equally devoted to his passion, technology. He could spend hours behind a computer, with a soldering iron, or over blueprints, creating incredible devices from old microchips and makeshift materials. His introversion often bordered on reclusiveness, but in moments when it came to technical puzzles, Artem blossomed. His mind worked quickly and unconventionally, finding solutions where others saw only a set of parts. His friends valued him for his ability to revive any broken thing and for his ingenious inventions, which often bailed them out in the most unexpected situations. Yaroslav kept a bit apart from the rest. There was always a certain mystery in his behavior, a depth in his gaze that was unusual for his age. He rarely talked about himself, but his friends felt that something extraordinary was hidden behind his calm exterior. His intuition often proved surprisingly accurate, and sometimes it seemed he knew a little more about events than he let on. He had a special charisma that attracted people to him but also created a certain distance. Dennis sensed a potential power in Yaroslav that he had not yet fully revealed. Lucy sometimes caught herself thinking that hints of something supernatural slipped into his stories about dreams and feelings, but Yaroslav always changed the subject in time. Legends of the Forgotten City were one of the topics in the school history curriculum. The teacher, Ms. Irina, spoke of an ancient settlement that had suddenly vanished from the face of the earth many centuries ago, leaving no trace. There were various theories, from natural disasters to the curses of angry gods. The most romantic version spoke of a city hidden in another dimension, waiting for its time to reappear. Of course, most students took these stories as beautiful fairy tales, nothing more. Dennis preferred facts and proven theories. Artem scoffed skeptically, finding many logical inconsistencies in the legends. Only Lucy listened to Ms. Irina's stories with bated breath, imagining the majestic buildings covered in the dust of ages and the whispers of forgotten voices. Yaroslav simply remained silent, occasionally casting thoughtful glances at the teacher, as if he knew something that others did not. For the four friends, these legends were just another school subject, nothing more. They lived their ordinary lives in a modern city, with its noise, rush, and everyday worries, not even suspecting how close they were to unraveling the mystery of the forgotten city. Their different characters and interests existed as if in parallel, rarely intersecting in anything serious. But fate was already preparing them for an encounter with something incredible that would forever change their lives and unite them with a common purpose. And the beginning of this change was very near, hiding behind the dust of a school excursion to the local history museum. Chapter 2. The Artifact. The school excursion to the local history museum seemed to Dennis like another boring obligation. He reluctantly trailed behind the noisy crowd of classmates, mentally making a list of things to do in the evening. Lucy, on the other hand, glowed with curiosity, examining each display case with such enthusiasm as if the keys to unknown worlds lay before her. Artem, as always, kept to himself, attentively studying the diagrams of ancient mechanisms exhibited in the hall, occasionally muttering something under his breath about their primitiveness. Yaroslav walked calmly beside them, his gaze gliding over the exhibits, but it seemed that something more than what was behind the glass interested him. The guide, Ms. Olga, enthusiastically recounted the history of the region, stopping at particularly valuable exhibits. Here were the tools of primitive people, here were fragments of ancient pottery, here was a collection of coins from the times of Chivan Rus. Lucy listened attentively, occasionally asking questions that stumped even the experienced Ms. Olga. Dennis mechanically nodded, trying not to miss any messages from friends in the school chat. Artem unobtrusively took a miniature notebook from his backpack and jotted down some of his observations about the construction of an ancient lock. Yaroslav stopped at a display case with a metal object darkened by time, his eyebrows slightly furrowed. It was a small, irregularly shaped object made of an unknown dull metal, covered in bizarre patterns resembling the intertwining of snakes or the branches of strange plants. It was not labeled and seemed to have ended up among other, less significant exhibits by chance. Lucy, intrigued by the unusual appearance of the artifact, approached to get a better look. "What is this?" she asked Ms. Olga. The guide shrugged. "Oh, this. It seems to be some old ornament. We don't know its exact origin. It was found during excavations on the outskirts of the city a few years ago. Probably doesn't have much historical value, so it's just here." Lucy frowned. It seemed to her that there was more to this unremarkable object. Some invisible vibration seemed to emanate from it, attracting her attention. She felt an irresistible urge to touch it. At that moment, Dennis, having finished texting, approached his friends. Artem looked up from his notes and also became interested in the strange object. "Strange alloy," he muttered, leaning closer. "Doesn't look like anything I know. And the pattern is unusual." Yaroslav stood silently beside them, his gaze fixed on the artifact. His face seemed tense, as if he was trying to remember something important. Suddenly, Lucy, unable to resist, reached out and touched the metal. Instantly, she felt a strange tingling in her fingers, and the air around them seemed to thicken. Artem recoiled, exclaiming in surprise. Dennis instinctively took a step back. Yaroslav sharply raised his head, his eyes widened in surprise, and an expression appeared on his face that his friends had never seen before, a mixture of fear and some strange knowledge. The object in Lucy's hand suddenly flared with a dim blue light. The patterns on it began to glow, as if ancient energy had awakened within. The air around them vibrated, and a strange silence fell in the museum hall, broken only by a light crackling sound coming from the artifact. Ms. Olga, who at that moment was talking about ancient clothing, fell silent, looking in surprise at what was happening. Other students began to whisper, pointing at Lucy and the glowing object. The light grew brighter, and suddenly the space around the friends began to distort. The walls of the museum rippled as in a crooked mirror, sounds disappeared, and a strange feeling of weightlessness enveloped their bodies. They were as if being pulled somewhere, into an unknown abyss, beyond the boundaries of the familiar world. The last thing Dennis managed to see was Lucy's frightened gaze, Artem's surprised face, and a strange, almost fatalistic calm in Yaroslav's eyes. Then a blinding blue wave engulfed them all, and they vanished from the local history museum hall, leaving behind only astonished witnesses and a quiet echo of the strange event. They had been transported to where they had only read in legends, to the forgotten city, existing outside of time. Chapter 3. The Forgotten City. When the blue glow vanished, the friends were as if spat out into another world. They lay on a cobblestone pavement made of large, uneven stones, feeling dizzy and a slight nauseous taste in their mouths. Gradually, their vision returned, and before them stood a picture that had nothing in common with their familiar urban landscape. Around them towered buildings made of dark, almost black stone, adorned with bizarre carvings and sharp spires that reached into the gloomy sky. Narrow streets wound between them, disappearing into shadows. The atmosphere was strange, a silence that was not peaceful but rather tense, as if the city was holding its breath in anticipation of something. The air was damp and smelled of mildew and some unknown exotic plants. Dennis was the first to get up, cautiously looking around. His leadership instincts kicked in instantly. He needed to assess the situation, understand where they were, and how to get out of here. "Are you okay?" he asked, helping Lucy up, who looked bewildered but at the same time full of curiosity. "I think so," she mumbled, her eyes wide as she examined the surrounding buildings. This is incredible. Is this really the Forgotten City?" Artem got up on his own, brushing off his clothes. Skepticism was written on his face, but even he was intrigued by what he saw. Teleportation. Parallel dimension. What physical laws operate here? He muttered, trying to find at least some logical explanation for what had happened. Yaroslav was the last to rise. His face was serious and focused. He silently looked around, as if searching for something or recognizing familiar features in this strange place. Suddenly, a figure slipped out of one of the dark arches. It was tall and thin, dressed in a long cloak of dark fabric that concealed its face. The stranger moved smoothly and silently, and there was a strange, almost mystical energy in its presence. The friends instinctively tensed, ready for anything. Dennis took a step forward, shielding Lucy and Artem. Yaroslav, on the other hand, stepped behind him, watching the stranger intently. The figure stopped a few meters from them and slowly raised its head. From under the hood peered a pale face with large, dark eyes that glowed with a strange inner light. Its narrow lips curved into a barely perceptible smile. "Welcome, newcomers," a quiet, melodious voice sounded, with unearthly undertones. "We have been waiting for you." The friends exchanged glances, stunned by what they heard. Could the legends be true? And were they really expected here? The first hours in the Forgotten City passed as in a dream. They were led through the labyrinths of narrow streets, shown strange buildings, statues of mythical creatures, and squares covered with ancient symbols. Time here truly felt different, the days seemed longer, and the nights, deeper and calmer. They met other inhabitants of the city, creatures they had previously seen only in mythology books. Graceful elves with pointed ears, stocky gnomes with long beards, winged beings soaring in the heights. All of them looked at the friends with curiosity and respect, as if they knew about their arrival in advance. Lucy was in awe. She asked about the history of the city, their customs and legends, trying to absorb every detail of this amazing world. Artem tried to find at least some scientific explanations for what he saw, analyzing the architecture of the buildings and the material they were made of. Dennis felt a growing sense of responsibility. He understood that they had ended up here for a reason, and that their actions could determine their own fate and the fate of this strange city. Yaroslav continued to remain silent, but his gaze became more meaningful, as if he was beginning to remember something important. The first impressions of the Forgotten City were overwhelming. It was a world that was both enchanting in its beauty and frightening in its unknownness. The friends found themselves in the very heart of a legend, and now they had to find out what role they were to play in its continuation. Chapter 4. The Prophecy. The unusual guide, who called himself Kalen, led the friends to an ancient building that towered in the very center of the city. Its walls were covered with carved images of celestial bodies and wondrous creatures, and tall windows let in a dim light, creating a mystical atmosphere. Inside the building, they were met by an old man with long white hair and wise eyes that radiated peace and knowledge. He sat on a carved throne, surrounded by respectful inhabitants of the city. Kalen bowed to him and introduced the newcomers. "Wise elder, these are the four of whom the prophecy speaks." The old man carefully examined the friends, his gaze lingering on each of them. In his eyes, ancient stories and unexplored mysteries seemed to be reflected. "Welcome to Ecolonia, children from another world, he said in a quiet but authoritative voice. We have awaited your arrival for long centuries. Dennis, as always, took the initiative. A prophecy. We don't understand. Who are we, and why have you been waiting for us? The wise elder smiled, and his face brightened. An ancient prophecy speaks of the arrival of 4 strangers in a time of greatest danger. They will come through a rift between worlds, brought by the light of a mysterious artifact. Each of them will possess unique gifts that together can save our city from the encroaching darkness. Lucy gasped. All the legends she had read turned out to be not just fairy tales. She and her friends had become part of something much larger and more important. Darkness? What darkness? Dennis asked anxiously. Since ancient times, our city has flourished thanks to harmony with nature and the magical forces that nourish Ecolonia, the elder explained. But recently, this harmony has begun to crumble. From hidden depths, an ancient dark force has awakened, seeking to devour the light of our city. It sows discord, breeds fear, and gradually destroys the magical barrier that protects us from the outside world. Artem frowned skeptically. Magic? A barrier? This sounds like. It is reality, young skeptic, the elder interrupted, his gaze becoming sterner. A reality that may soon vanish if you do not help us. Yaroslav, who had been silent until this moment, finally spoke. And each of us has a specific role in this prophecy. The elder nodded. Yes. The prophecy speaks of a leader with a sharp mind and strategic thinking, of one whose heart yearns for knowledge and whose curiosity will unlock ancient secrets, of one whose mind is capable of connecting the unconnected and finding unconventional solutions, and of one who has a deep connection to the spiritual world and is able to sense hidden flows of energy. The friends exchanged glances, trying to recognize themselves in these descriptions. Dennis felt a flicker of hope and anxiety stir within him. A leader. It was a responsibility he had always carried, but now the stakes were much higher. Lucy felt her heart beat faster at the realization that her love for history could hold real power. Artem pondered, trying to imagine how his knowledge could help in this magical world. Yaroslav felt the elder's words resonate in his soul, confirming the strange sensations that had accompanied him throughout his life. The prophecy also speaks of trials you will have to face, the elder continued. Each of you will confront your inner fears and doubts. Only by overcoming them will you be able to fully unlock your potential and fulfill your destiny. Kaelin approached the friends and placed a hand on Dennis's shoulder. We believe in you, newcomers. The hope of Ecolonia now rests in your hands. The air was thick with tension and anticipation. The friends found themselves at the center of an ancient legend, and now they needed to figure out what to do next. The forgotten city needed their help, and they, ordinary teenagers from another world, had become the only hope for its salvation. Chapter 5. Dennis's Trial. After speaking with the wise elder, Kaelin led Dennis away separately. They ended up in a tall tower, whose windows offered a panoramic view of the forgotten city. From this height, the city seemed even more mysterious and majestic, but Dennis felt a growing unease in his heart. The elder sees a leader in you, Dennis, Kaelin said, looking at him with a kind smile. But true leadership is forged in trials. Dennis nodded silently. He had always considered himself a leader, but finding himself in this strange world, he felt uncertain. The familiar rules didn't apply here, and his ability to think strategically seemed insufficient for the first time. Your trial awaits you in the old fortress on the outskirts of the city, Kaelin continued. It is a place where the past meets the present, and where the shadows of past failures can become obstacles on the path to future victories. The next morning, Dennis set off for the old fortress. The path led through gloomy forests and winding trails. The closer he got to his destination, the stronger his anxiety became. The fortress stood on a hill, its ruined walls and somber towers evoking a sense of desolation and oblivion. Entering inside, Dennis found himself in a large courtyard overgrown with tall grass and ivy-covered ruins. The atmosphere here was oppressive, the air felt heavy and saturated with memories of past battles and losses. Suddenly, a figure appeared before him. It was covered in a dark cloak, and its face was hidden by a deep hood. A cold and powerful aura emanated from the stranger. "You are the leader." A hollow voice sounded, filled with disdain. "You, a mere boy, think you are capable of leading?" Dennis clenched his fists. This voice touched some deep-seated doubts about his own worth, the very ones he had struggled with his whole life. "I am here to face the trial," Dennis replied firmly, trying to hide his nervousness. "Trial?" The stranger laughed mockingly. "Your trial is to realize your own weakness. You fear failure, you fear not living up to expectations. You are not a leader, but merely an imposter striving to prove something that is not there." The stranger's words struck Dennis right in the heart. He remembered all his failures, all the moments when he had doubted his decisions. The shadows of past mistakes began to surround him, paralyzing his will. Suddenly, illusions appeared before him, the faces of his friends filled with disappointment, the mocking gazes of classmates, the shadow of his father who had always silently doubted his abilities. Fear gripped him, robbing him of the ability to act. But deep within Dennis, a spark of stubbornness flickered. He remembered Kalen's words about true leadership being forged in trials. He remembered the trust of his friends, the hope of the inhabitants of this strange city. He couldn't let them down. Gathering all his will, Dennis took a step forward. "Perhaps I was afraid before," he said, his voice sounding firm despite the inner turmoil. "But fear is just an illusion. A true leader is not one who never makes mistakes, but one who is able to rise after falling and lead others despite obstacles. I am not an imposter. I am one who is willing to learn and grow to protect those I care about." At the moment, the dark figure began to dissolve into the air, and the illusions vanished. In their place appeared a glowing crystal radiating a warm light. Dennis felt the anxiety disappear from his heart, replaced by confidence and determination. He had passed his trial. Chapter 6. Lucy's Trial. For Lucy, the trial began with an invitation to visit the ancient library, which was housed deep beneath the city. A quiet and thoughtful keeper, whose eyes seemed as old as the books themselves, led her there. The library's shelves stretched high into the air, filled with thick tomes in leather bindings, scrolls of parchment, and stone tablets with unknown scripts. The scent of old paper and dust created a special atmosphere of mystery and knowledge. "Here are stored the histories of our world," the keeper whispered, his voice barely reaching Lucy. "The knowledge of the past is the key to understanding the present and the future. But some knowledge is hidden especially carefully, and only one with a sincere heart and a curious mind can obtain it." He led Lucy to a separate hall where an old, unremarkable book without a title lay on a pedestal. "This book has been waiting for you," the keeper said. "In it, you will find answers to your questions, but the path to them will be filled with illusions and distorted truths." When Lucy opened the book, the pages were blank. She looked at the keeper in confusion, but he only silently pointed to a mirror standing nearby. Looking into it, Lucy saw not her own reflection but an image of an ancient city, flourishing and full of life. People in old-fashioned clothes walked the streets, and magic filled the air. Suddenly, the image began to change. The flourishing city began to decay, buildings crumbled, and the joyful faces of the inhabitants twisted with fear and despair. Lucy watched in horror as the once great civilization perished. Then, a woman appeared in the mirror, whose face seemed familiar to Lucy, although she had never seen her before. There was deep sadness in her eyes, but also strength. The woman reached out her hand to Lucy, as if trying to convey something. The woman's voice sounded in Lucy's head, quiet and melodious, like an ancient song. "Seek the truth in your heart. Do not trust only what you see, for illusions can be deceiving. The memory of the past lives within you. The image in the mirror vanished, and Lucy saw her own reflection again. The book in her hands had also changed, ancient scripts began to appear on the blank pages. Lucy felt some ancient knowledge awaken in her mind, as if memories of events that had never happened to her. She spent hours deciphering the writings and learned about the history of the forgotten city, its rise and fall. She understood that the dark force threatening the city now was not something new. It had already tried to engulf Ecolonia in the past, and it was then that the civilization she had seen in the mirror had perished. Lucy also learned about her own heritage. The woman in the mirror was her distant ancestor, one of those who once possessed the knowledge and wisdom needed to protect the city. Her love for history and ancient legends turned out to be no coincidence. It was a call of blood, an echo of the past living in her soul. Lucy's trial was to distinguish truth from illusions, to uncover hidden knowledge, and to accept her heritage. She realized that her curiosity and love for history were not just hobbies but a real power capable of helping to save the forgotten city. Chapter 7. Artem's Trial. Artem found himself in an old, abandoned workshop on the outskirts of the city. Broken mechanisms, rusty tools, and incomprehensible devices lay scattered everywhere. The air smelled of oil and metal, familiar scents, but the surroundings were alien and magical. A hologram appeared before him, a flickering image of an elderly man in glasses and an engineer's apron. "Welcome, young master," the hologram said in a mechanical voice. "You possess a mind capable of creating wonders. But can you apply your knowledge where magic prevails? Your trial is to find a way to combine science and magic, to create something that will help protect our city." Artem initially felt skeptical. Magic seemed to him something irrational, anti-scientific. But examining the workshop, he noticed strange artifacts emitting incomprehensible energy and blueprints of complex mechanisms operating on unknown principles. His engineering curiosity took over. He began to explore the workshop, analyzing each object, trying to understand how technology and magic were combined here. He disassembled old mechanisms, studied the properties of magical crystals, and tried to find common patterns. Artem's trial was not only to create a new device but also to overcome his own skepticism, to open his mind to new possibilities. He realized that magic might not be just a figment of imagination but another form of energy that could be studied and used. After long hours of experiments and reflections, Artem finally found a solution. He decided to create a device that could concentrate and direct magical energy, using scientific principles for this. He used the found crystals as an energy source and the ancient mechanisms as a basis for controlling the flows of magic. His invention was a strange hybrid of science and magic, a device with a complex system of lenses and conductors that glowed with a soft blue light. When Artem activated it, he felt a powerful surge of energy. The device could create protective fields, generate energy pulses, and even affect the surrounding environment. Artem passed his trial, proving that the mind and knowledge can be stronger than any prejudice. He found a way to connect two worlds, creating a unique technology that could become the key to saving the forgotten city. Chapter 8. Yaroslav's Trial. Yaroslav found himself in a quiet grove where old trees with silver bark reached towards the gloomy sky. The air was filled with barely audible whispers and a sense of the presence of something unseen. A transparent figure appeared before him, resembling a spirit, its face calm and wise. "You are the one who hears the voices of the winds and the whispers of the earth," the spirit said in a quiet voice. "You have a connection to a world hidden from others. Your trial is to accept your essence, to learn to control your abilities, and to find a connection with your ancestors." Yaroslav had always felt that he was different from others. His dreams were filled with strange visions, he felt incomprehensible emotions that floated in the air, and sometimes it seemed to him that he heard voices that were not addressed to him. He tried to ignore these feelings, considering them figments of his imagination. But in this place, where the boundary between worlds seemed thin, his abilities sharpened. He felt the presence of spirits, saw barely perceptible flows of energy that permeated everything around. Yaroslav's trial was to stop being afraid of his otherness, to accept his gift, and to learn to use it. The spirit led him through the grove, showing him places of power where the energy of the earth was particularly strong. He taught Yaroslav to meditate, immersing himself in his inner world to find a connection with his ancestors, those who also had a special connection with the supernatural. During his meditations, Yaroslav began to have visions. He saw his ancestors, shamans and wise men who lived in harmony with nature and possessed knowledge of the spiritual world. They passed on their knowledge to him, taught him to control energy, communicate with spirits, and sense hidden threats. Yaroslav understood that his mysteriousness and intuition were not accidental but the heritage of his lineage. He accepted his essence, felt the power that awakened within him. He learned to see what was hidden from others, to hear the voices that echoed in the silence. His trial ended when he was able to summon the spirits of his ancestors, and they became his allies, ready to help in the fight against the dark force. Yaroslav found his place in this strange world, using his unique gift to protect the forgotten city. Chapter 9. The Threat. Time in the forgotten city flew by quickly. The friends had passed their personal trials, each unlocking new strengths and abilities within themselves. Dennis became a confident leader, capable of making difficult decisions. Lucy possessed knowledge of the city's past and its secrets. Artem created unique devices combining science and magic. Yaroslav learned to control his connection to the supernatural. But the dark force the wise elder had spoken of was not dormant. Its influence became increasingly palpable. The sky above the city began to darken, the air filled with anxiety and fear. Mythical creatures became more aggressive, and the magical barriers protecting the city weakened. The first defeat caught them unexpectedly. During a reconnaissance on the outskirts of the city, they encountered creatures spawned by the darkness, distorted shadows that devoured light and energy. The friends, though using their newfound powers, could not withstand their numbers and malice. They had to retreat, suffering losses. This defeat hit their morale hard. Dennis doubted his ability to lead for the first time. Lucy felt powerless against the darkness that threatened to destroy all the history she loved so much. Artem saw that his inventions were not a panacea for all evil. Yaroslav felt the voices of the spirits become more and weaker. Despair began to creep into their hearts. Could they, ordinary teenagers from another world, really save this ancient city from destruction? Chapter 10. Unity. After their first defeat, a tense silence settled over the friends' camp. Each of them processed the setback in their own way, and it seemed their unity had begun to crack. Dennis blamed himself for wrong decisions. Lucy retreated into her books, trying to find answers in the past. Artem immersed himself in his calculations again, searching for new ways to fight. Yaroslav silently communicated with the spirits, feeling their growing fear. But it was in this critical moment that the true strength of their friendship manifested. Lucy was the first to realize that alone they were weak. She reminded her friends of the prophecy, of the fact that only by combining their unique gifts could they resist the darkness. Artem, reviewing his calculations, realized that his devices would be much more effective if used in conjunction with Yaroslav's magical abilities and Lucy's knowledge. Yaroslav, feeling the support of his friends, was able to establish a stronger connection with the spirits, receiving new knowledge from them about the weaknesses of the dark force. Dennis, seeing the determination of his friends, felt his leadership strength return. He understood that true leadership lies not in the absence of mistakes, but in the ability to unite a team and lead it forward, even after defeats. The friends overcame their internal conflicts and reunited as a team. They began to develop a joint plan to fight the dark force, using each other's strengths. Chapter 11. Secrets of the City. In their search for a way to defeat the darkness, Lucy delved deeper into the study of ancient texts. She learned about the history of the forgotten city, about its flourishing in ancient times when its inhabitants lived in harmony with nature and possessed powerful magic. But then tragedy struck. Greed and the lust for power led to a schism among the inhabitants, and the dark force that had slumbered in the depths of this world was unleashed, causing the fall of the civilization. Lucy also uncovered the secret of the artifact that had brought them to this world. It turned out to be a key, created by ancient sages for the connection between worlds and the summoning of those who could restore balance. The prophecy of the four newcomers was not just a legend, it was a plan devised many centuries ago. Chapter 12. Preparation. Understanding the full seriousness of the threat, the friends began to prepare meticulously for the final confrontation. Artem refined his devices, creating new types of weapons and protective equipment. Yaroslav established connections with various mythical creatures, persuading them to join the fight against the darkness. Denis developed a battle strategy, taking into account the strengths and weaknesses of allies and enemies. Lucy used her knowledge of history and magic to find the weaknesses of the dark force and ways to destroy it. They formed alliances with elves, gnomes, and other inhabitants of the Forgotten City, convincing them to unite against the common enemy. Chapter 13. The Final Battle. The day of the decisive battle arrived. The army of darkness advanced on the city, its ranks composed of distorted creatures and shadows controlled by a powerful dark entity. At the head of the united forces of the Forgotten City stood the four friends. The battle was epic and fierce. Artem used his devices to create powerful energy fields and strike enemies with devastating impulses. Yaroslav called upon the spirits of nature and his ancestors, who fought side by side with the city's inhabitants. Lucy, using the knowledge gained from ancient books, found weaknesses in the enemy's defenses and directed allies. Denis, as the leader, coordinated the actions of all forces, making quick and decisive decisions. In the heat of battle, each of the friends faced personal trials again. Denis had to confront his fears and doubts once more, but now he met them with unwavering determination. Lucy used her knowledge not only as a weapon but also as a shield, protecting her friends from dark magic. Artem took risks, improving his devices right in the thick of the fight, finding new ways to use energy. Yaroslav fully embraced his essence, his connection to the spiritual world becoming his strongest weapon. The battle reached its climax when the friends confronted the dark entity itself. It was a shapeless shadow radiating cold and fear. Its power seemed insurmountable. At this moment, Yaroslav, using the power of his ancestors, managed to temporarily restrain it, giving Artem time to activate his most powerful invention, a device capable of concentrating pure light. Lucy, knowing the darkness's weakness to light, directed the device's energy at the entity's most vulnerable point. Denis, using his strategic mind, found the moment for the decisive blow, directing all his will and leadership energy into the darkness. The dark entity screamed in pain and began to disintegrate, finally vanishing into the wind like a nightmare. With its disappearance, the sky above the city brightened again, and the air filled with a sense of relief and hope. But victory did not come easily. There were casualties in the battle, and each of the friends bore their scars, not only physical but also emotional. Chapter 14. The Return. After the victory over the darkness, peace settled in the Forgotten City. The magical barriers began to mend, and the inhabitants once again felt hope for the future. The friends understood that their mission here was complete. The wise elder told them about a portal that would open at a special time to return them home. The portal was located in an ancient temple on the summit of the city's highest mountain. The journey to the temple was filled with memories of the adventures they had experienced and the new friends they had made in this strange world. The farewells were emotional. The elves, gnomes, and other inhabitants of Ecolonia thanked them for their salvation, promising never to forget their heroism. In the temple, at the moment of the rising of two moons, a radiant portal opened. The friends cast one last glance at the Forgotten City, feeling sadness and at the same time joy for their impending return. A final test awaited them at the very edge of the portal. They needed to let go of everything they had found here, magical objects, new abilities, memories of adventures, to return to their world as they had been before. But in truth, they would never be the same. With heavy hearts, the friends stepped into the portal, feeling the familiar blue glow envelop them once more. Chapter 15. A New Life. They found themselves back in the hall of the local history museum, in the same spot where they had found the artifact. The usual silence reigned around them, and the guide continued her story, oblivious to what had transpired. Time in their world seemed not to have moved. But for Dennis, Lucy, Artem, and Yaroslav, everything had changed forever. They had returned as different people, stronger, wiser, with a deeper understanding of themselves and the world. Dennis felt a newfound confidence as a leader, capable of overcoming any difficulties. Lucy realized that her love for history was not just a hobby but a key to understanding the universe. Artem had become less skeptical, opening himself to the possibility of things that could not be explained by science. Yaroslav had accepted his uniqueness and learned to use his gift for good. Their everyday lives now seemed different. They saw the world from a new perspective, noticing details that had previously gone unnoticed. They had become more mature and responsible. Most importantly, their friendship had grown even stronger. They had gone through incredible trials together and now knew they could count on each other in any situation. They kept the memories of the forgotten city, its inhabitants, and their heroic struggle in their hearts. And although they had returned to their ordinary lives, a part of their hearts would forever remain in Ecolonia, a city that existed outside of time, a city they had saved. And who knows, perhaps someday, when the worlds aligned again, they would once more hear the echoes of the forgotten city.